Welcome to the Big Bag, your one-stop shop for all things franchise cricket. My name is Mark Machado, and I'm joined by my good friend and pal across the river, Nick Brookes. We are both broadcasting from London. We are going to be talking today about the WPL. That's coming to a conclusion the next few days. We're going to talk about Harry Brook and his decision not to play in the IPL. And we're also going to review the four remaining teams that we didn't get to last week from the Indian Premier League, which starts, the IPL starts in about a week's time. So I believe, Nick, that in Chennai, they've just taken Dhoni out of the deep freeze and he's ready to go, ready for action. Any moment now to walk out, to stroll out to about 11.4 overs in. Sorry, not 11, 19.4 overs in. And obviously to potentially keep wicket as well, I imagine. Nick, let's get into it. Let's kind of the big news is that I suppose the WPL's coming to a head this week. Have you been like what's kind of your broad takes on it? I'll tell you what my thoughts are. I reckon the BCCI are watching this tournament and thinking, or they should be thinking, we need to do more for our domestic players because it's been absolutely dominated by the foreign stars in the league. And while it's great to watch, that's not doing Indian cricket much favours, I'd imagine.
Yeah, man, I agree. You look down the sort of list of leading wicket takers, leading run scorers, and it's the kind of big names who you'd expect. I think probably the one exception who I'd tout has been Kashvi Gautam, young seam bowling all-rounder, who I've been super impressed with the few glimpses that I've seen from her. She bowls fast, she swings the ball, she can hit a couple of sixes down the order. So that's one breakout star. But yeah, apart from that, it has been very dominated by your big names, your Lannings, your Hayley Matthews. It's I also think, Marky, we had this debate a few weeks back where you were saying 5 teams doesn't make for a great league. I'm increasingly coming to your side of the coin because I think it's been clear for a long while that these 3 teams were going to be the 3 top teams who qualified for the knockouts. RCB massively fell away, and now you've got a situation where like the last week, 10 days of the league stage has seemed totally pointless. And you come to the eliminators in the final and it seems like a bit of a crapshoot, right? And I don't think that's great for a league. I was wondering if they're not going to increase the number of teams, could they do like a sort of American sports style final series where you get the best 2 teams playing each other 3 times maybe, and it's a best of 3. I imagine that's probably not what broadcasters would favor. But yeah, I guess also they haven't been helped out by the scheduling, right? It's the Champions Trophy kind of stole a bit of the spotlight away from it, and now we've got the IPL coming next week. It's been a congested time, and I've got to say I haven't been watching the games every day. I've been kind of keeping across it a bit, but it feels like it hasn't been quite as much of a hit as it was last year.
Yeah, so the Gujarat Giants have kind of started off quite poorly, but managed to get themselves into the top 3, which also bucks the trend of kind of what early few weeks ago we were saying you basically, if you don't have a men's IPL side, you're at a serious disadvantage. You don't have a kind of system set up underneath the actual playing squad, right? There's 2 things, right? Because I think next year potentially, I need to check the dates, but this might be played at exactly the same time that the men's T20 World Cup's happening, which in India as well, in Sri Lanka and India, which is going to really like absorb a lot more oxygen than a Champions Trophy that's been played a million miles away in the UAE. So I think they need to have a slight rethink of it because essentially, I do still think it's the best women's franchise product that we've got because I think the BBL is too diluted. It doesn't have enough foreign players. And the 100 is really good, but doesn't have all the best foreign players in it quite yet. We'll get on to the 100 as well. But I just think you have to go back to this 5-team thing. It's interesting because you said a 3 series, a final with where they play each other 3 times. I also think the other thing that you could do is just take away the eliminator as well. So just the top 2 straight to the final.
Yeah, I'd be happy with that.
Because then it just that little bit more jeopardy, right? Where, yeah, 5 team leagues just aren't going to build any drama and any. You're going to really struggle to get momentum. I think you need. Yeah. I mean, the 100 had what, 8 teams in it.
Yeah, and no, I agree. 5-team leagues just aren't good. I guess you'd say that you do have to dilute the quality slightly if you go up. But as Dan Weston said when we had him on a few weeks back, you could go to 5 overseas, and that 5-6 split would slightly balance it out. I think the other thing that I agree with you, Marky, that it's the best franchise league. One thing that has been really encouraging is that everything I've watched, the crowds have been really good. Which, considerably better than the crowds that we saw at the Champions Trophy, which speaks to the passion for cricket in India. I think one thing that the 100 did really well, which I know they kind of did by accident, was the double headers. So you've got the women's games before the men's games. I wonder whether there's possibility for them to do that with the WPL and the IPL.
Yeah, I mean, they've been fairly ferocious about trying to keep the two apart, right? And I suppose because they've got different owners for some of the teams, that might be quite difficult, right? I don't know how Lucknow Super Giants would feel about having to kind of share a match day with UP Warriors, for example.
Yeah, I guess that is kind of awkward, and I imagine the IPL owners wouldn't be too chuffed about it, but I think that would be a good thing for the WPL and would get more eyes on it.
Yeah, I think so. I think it would get more attention. I mean, I wonder if as well, because the PSL has been played at the same time as the IPL this year and presumably going forward, how that might change the way the BCCI think about audiences, and whether, I'd imagine with the PSL, they might start changing the times of their matches so they're not being played at the same time as the IPL, stuff like that. So, there's kind of a political current as well that might encourage the BCCI to rethink the way when and how the WPL is played as well. You could, I suppose, somewhere like UP or even Mumbai. There isn't just one cricket stadium in Mumbai, right? There's other places where you can play it. So you could have the men and women playing in the same city, different parts of it during the day. I don't know how Indian police would feel about that in terms of having 2 massive cricket matches going on. But yeah, there's ways. I mean, what, we're in it? Is it the 3rd season now?
I think it's the 3rd season.
Yeah. It was 23, 24, 25. I think that, I think the main thing I would think about is add an extra side. I don't think there's a lack of people who'd want to run the teams as well. And yeah, I agree. Go the Dan Weston method and add an extra foreign player to everything, and it will kind of raise the standard over time. I think just kind of go for it, right? There was a lot of there was a lot of anxiety around the women's 100, but it's kind of worked. Not kind of worked. It's worked really well.
Yeah, it's worked really well.
Yeah,
it's one of the few good things they've done, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. Delhi Capitals women have made it to the final, because I just kind of feel, I'm going to review the IPL teams that we didn't get to last week at some point during the show. But I kind of feel the Capitals organisation is really sorting itself out in terms of player recruitment and the style of which they want to play games, how they're going to play games, how they're going to win. We've seen that in the kind of satellite tournaments. We haven't really seen that in the IPL yet. But this is another example of them rising to the top, right?
Yeah, I hope so. I really like the Capitals. I've been a big fan of the men's side, going back to the days when they had a lot of young Indian players coming through, really exciting batters, when they had, who was it? Panchor, Sampson, Iyer, all in that team. And I think they're probably slight favourites for the women's final here. Shafali Verma and Meg Lanning have formed a really potent opening partnership. And I think it's good for Indian cricket, a strong Capitals, right? You want your big city clubs to be putting out big performances. And so I think there are promising signs for the Capitals. although they've been hurt by that Harry Brook news this week.
Yeah, let's get into that, right? So Harry Brook has decided that he will not be partaking in this year's IPL, which potentially gets him a 2-year ban. He had to leave the tournament. Did he leave it early? Did he even get there last year? I can't remember.
He didn't get there.
He didn't get there because that was because of a family bereavement. So obviously, sorry to hear that, but that means he has now missed 2 tournaments in a row. The kind of conversation in England is that he's decided to do this because he wants to take over the white ball captaincy. But Nick, I put it to you that if you want to be the best you can be as a white ball player and fulfill your potential, you want to be right in the thick of it for the IPL, right? Because that's where you're going to see new things. You're going to meet the best coaches in the world. You're going to play with the best data analysts in the world and some of the best players in the world. And that is the home of innovation, right? It's like a footballer deciding that he doesn't want to play in the Champions League because he wants to focus on winning the World Cup. For me, it's a bit of an odd decision, this.
Yeah, I 100% agree, Marky. I think you would have to say that for all Harry Brook's talents, he hasn't cracked white ball cricket consistently yet. And as you say, you want your best players to be playing in the best competitions, and the IPL is without doubt that it's the highest quality T20 cricket. There is the breeding ground for really good T20I cricketers. So it's a funny one. I was listening to the Wisdom podcast yesterday, and Yas Rana made the point that Harry Brook has been on the wheel for pretty much 9 months straight without a break, which is fair enough. I do have some sympathy for that, but he knew that when he signed up for the IPL. And I think just because this England captaincy is opened up, I'm not sure I agree with the decision. It's kind of, I was thinking it's like if you've RSVP'd for a wedding and then you get like Champions League final tickets the day before. Do you just say like, oh, sack it off, I'm not going to go to that. So I think the 2-year ban is right, because I also think something that no one's really talking about is this, like, it's a massive hit for Delhi, right? They spent 6.25 crore on Brook, and now by default they're going to have to replace him with an overseas player who wasn't picked up at the auction, who no one bidded for. And I mean, there's some good players left on the pile. I think they might pick up someone like Brevis, or maybe a Mitch Owen, who's, hot property right now. But Brevis had a reserve price of 75 lakhs. And I mean, Delhi have spent a good chunk of their budget on Brook, and in doing so, they've sacrificed bench strength. So I was just like having a look at the buy prices. And if they had gone for someone like Brevis, they could have also picked up 2 more local batters, say Nehal Wadera for 4 and a bit crore, Rahane for 1.6 crore. And, so suddenly you've got a more rounded squad. I just think that players pulling out like this at the last minute, especially when they've been big buys, really handicaps teams. And that's why I think the 2-year ban is right. I think from an English cricket perspective, fine, Harry Brook, if he's going to be the white ball captain, he's going to be playing 3 formats. He needs a break somewhere. But now he's not going to be playing in the IPL till he's 29. And I think that's less than ideal.
Yeah, and also I think if I was Brendan McCullum or anyone at the ECB, I'd be trying to encourage him to go and play in this tournament, because, as you know, we know it's the best tournament in the world. It's not a debatable thing anymore. It's not even remotely up for debate. And I agree. I think the ban is correct, because if you're the IPL, the most important thing is to maintain the integrity of your tournament, right? And if you just cannot be having players do this. I mean, it shouldn't be done at all, but to do it 2 weeks out, it's actually kind of, it's not becoming of the kind of character you'd expect to captain the English cricket team. And I think it's a first moral victory for a franchise league in a very, very long time. I kind of, I don't know. I hope whoever manages to kind of take his slot manages to seize the moment of it all. And kind of make the most of it. It is a real shame, I think, for English cricket that he's not playing. Actually, I can't see the kind of positives around it. I mean, I know you said that he's been playing cricket for 9 months continuously, and I appreciate that there is people need a break and there's mental health concerns particularly around cricketers who who do live out of a suitcase and do trek around the world. But also, ultimately, my job is to make content and to do all the other bits and pieces involved in my job. You have a similar job to me, Nick. We just work all year round, as does everyone else in the world. I think it's a pretty hard, and maybe I've just got a much more kind of South Asian or Asian attitude towards it, but I just think you just got to accept that is your job. I think in a sport which has a calendar that is continuously evolving and changing and doesn't work to the benefit of the fans and the players, the one fixed thing in it every year at this moment in time is the IPL. So you know that's coming and you know when it is. And my final point on this would be is if I was Brendan McCullum, I'd say no. I think it's really important that you play this because I think that's where you can develop as a player, and also you can kind of make mistakes outside. If English cricket, if playing for England is your main thing, you could kind of go to the IPL and kind of make mistakes outside the spotlight of English cricket. If you go and get out in a ridiculous way in a white ball series against New Zealand this summer, or I can't remember who they're playing, then that's going to be written about in all the English press. If you do that against Lucknow Super Giants on a warm night in Delhi, then absolutely no one's going to talk about it in England. I know obviously we'll be talking about it because that's what the big bag is for, talking about franchise cricket. But it's a bit out of the spotlight. There's huge amounts of money involved in it, which it's important. I know you're going to be rich anyway, Harry Brook, but I think you've made a slightly wrong decision. And for me, I just can't fathom why it was ever part of the conversation. I mean, the only other thing I could think of is maybe he just doesn't like being in that part of the world for that long, and that's fine. Like, it is what it is, right? If you get homesick, if you want to stay close to family, then, and if you think this is the 4 weeks where you can stay at home, or 6 weeks, however long the tournament is, then so be it. But yeah, I think there is no cricketing reason why you should do this.
No, totally agree. And I think everyone apart from the ECB would have preferred if he took the month off for the 100 instead of missing the IPL. I also think it just highlights how weird cricket is. Like, as you say, Marky, if Jude Bellingham pulled out of the Champions League on the eve of the tournament for Real, like, the whole world would be up in arms. And Harry Brook does this on the eve of the IPL, and everyone's kind of just like, oh, good for him. He's going to be the next England captain.
Yeah, it's really weird, isn't it?
Weird.
Shall we move on? And we'll get to the IPL teams and start reviewing the 4 that we missed out on last week. But should we have a quick word about the 100? Because the 100 draft, potentially the last 100 draft, because I know they're talking about an auction, happened last night in the UK. David Warner went for big money, as did Jamie Overton. What's your thoughts on the draft, Nick?
I got a lot of thoughts on it, man. I think the first thing to say is that I was not across this at all. Actually, until yesterday morning, I didn't know it was happening. And I don't necessarily think that's me being slack. It's gone. So the first year they did the draft, it was on Sky Sports Live. Then they were doing a live stream on YouTube. This year they did nothing. There seems to have been not much about it in the media, not much public interest. And then to the draft itself, I should foreground this. I'm a bit conscious that I don't want to denigrate anyone and come across like a dick. But I looked at the pickups last night and I was like, what the fuck is going on? It just seemed bizarre to me. So many so the Oval Invincibles, they're paying Tom Curran 200 grand and they're paying Rashid Khan 120 grand. How does that make sense? As you say, Warner's gone for 120,000. Glenn Maxwell didn't get picked up. Other players who didn't get picked up, you got your Adam Zampa, Jake Fraser-McGurk, Ryan Rickleton, Shadab Khan, Hetmeyer, Narine, Dre Russ, Rovman Powell, Romario Shepherd, all kind of like Majib, Naveen Al-Haq, all IPL regulars not getting picked up. And then, a lot of players who are kind of like old, right? I've got a list here of some of the older guys who have picked up who I wasn't expecting. I mean, David Willey got 200 grand. Stoinis got 200 grand. Bairstow and Smith got 200 grand. Like guys like Faf, who's in his 40s, Kane Williamson, who I think hasn't been a good T20 player for a while, Jason Berendorf. It just all seemed to me really weird. Jamie Overton was the top pick. I think for a league that is trying to get into that conversation as the second best after the IPL, it just it just seemed weird. I don't know really what's going on, or maybe I am the one missing something here.
I just look at this draft, right, and I just think these guys are just opting out of being in consideration for the best stuff or whatever. I mean, there's so many, right? You kind of Indian players. Okay, fine. Why is basically every single player either South African or Australian? It's boring. It's dull. Is there no other parts of the world to find players from? Is there? I know that there's other tournaments that run at the same time as it. I mean, David Warner's about 1,000 years old at this point. Like even he doesn't want to play cricket. Like I think his wife might have signed him up for the draft. Like what is going on? This just isn't a serious tournament when it comes to the men's side of it. This is a serious women's tournament, but it's not a serious men's tournament. You can see this from the way they're recruiting players. I have absolutely no idea what is going on here. The ECB have gone out and they've sold these teams for a huge amount of money, and I don't know if they've just kind of given up after that and just gone, our job here is done. We do not need to create a product anymore. The owners will do it. I suspect it will kind of sort itself out in the next few years, or it doesn't. Right? It's just it's just become such a strange tournament at this point.
Yeah. Also, I mean, Michael Bracewell for 200,000 in the first round. He had a really, really good Champions Trophy final, but he's 34. He's hardly played any franchise cricket. I think he's played 7 games in the Blast, and bowling wise, he's got an economy of 9.66. He's struck at 1-2-4 with the bat. Like, is he really that player when you can take a Dreyrus and a Ryan for a Maxwell for 120 grand? Like, I just don't get it. It felt to me, looking through those buys, I was like, do these people watch T20 cricket? Which should not be your reaction. And again, I'm not trying to denigrate anyone, and some of these guys who I've said are odd buys could have really good tournaments, but there's a lot of stuff I don't understand here.
There's a huge amount of stuff that is going on. It just seems a bit weird. It's the kind of thing, if this happened in another league, you would be suspicious of it. When we talk about the LPL, when that comes around, we're quite suspicious of things in that. So we should possibly, we should be equally as suspicious of the shenanigans that are going on over here. I wonder if the draft happened too quickly for the new owners to really impact it and affect it. And maybe we have to wait till this time next year.
I get the sense that they weren't really involved. Bring on next year, hopefully a switch to an auction. And yeah, hopefully some, I guess, buys that just kind of are more congruent with the wider franchise landscape, right? That's what I think was my biggest takeaway, was that the kind of trends that we've seen around other leagues have been sort of largely ignored here in favor of players who have name value, who've been around for a long time. And maybe that is a priority because they want to get fans like watching this on telly. I was almost, given the players that were picked up, surprised that we didn't see Jimmy Anderson get a gig.
I was as well. I think the obvious placement would have been Manchester Originals, but actually they've got quite a coherent strategy, right? I mean, they picked up Ratchin and was it, who else? Is it Noor Ahmed they picked up as well?
Yeah, I think they got Noor Ahmed. And I actually think that given, the way we saw the ball swing around in the power play last year, Jimmy could perhaps be kind of useful in the 100. I guess the caveat to that is you've got to really front load him. You think that you probably can't bowl him at the death, so he's got to bowl most of his 20 in the power play, which then is quite limiting in terms of sort of team structure, I suppose.
Yeah, very. I suppose it depends how much you pick him up for, though, right? I mean, if you got him for not much, then because he might, you could, I suppose, in a more kind of South Asian way, bring him in effectively as a mentor for your team.
Totally. And I've got to say, as Jimmy Anderson bowling with a white ball on a Wednesday evening with a Chris Packett logo on his shirt, I'm tuning in to watch that.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely, definitely.
There's not much that gets me excited or makes me feel like I have to tune into the 100. So,
who's more likely to get you to buy a ticket, Jamie Overton or Jimmy Anderson?
Jimmy Anderson. I still haven't been to the 100 game live, which I think says something.
Have you not? Oh, mate, you're missing out. You
are
absolutely
great.
Yeah, it's definitely full. Like, it's definitely not me and you are not the target audience, but we still enjoy it. If you enjoy cricket, you'll enjoy it, right?
Yeah, I will try and go to the game this year.
Yeah, we should try and do that together.
Let's do that.
Let's do that. I think we might even be able to get press passes. Maybe. I mean, I won't if they've listened back to this and totally slag it off. The integrity of the whole thing off. Then probably I'm not likely to get one. But
yeah,
I'll give it a go.
Using the rank corruption, well, I think we're blacklisted.
It's not corruption. It's just incompetence. I
just pure stupidity.
Yeah, it's like, what are you doing? Why is Zach Crawley so expensive? Should we move on and talk about the IPL, because that is of more pressing interest. I think next week we're going to have to get onto the PSL as well.
Yeah, man.
It's. I mean, if you're like me and Nick and just like franchise cricket, but this is about to be your Christmas time, right? This is about to be your WrestleMania season. I mean, it is WrestleMania season already, anyway. But yeah, two of the biggest franchise leagues in the world start off and carry on at the same time. Last week, if you want to find out what we thought about the other teams, you can go back and listen back to last week's episode or watch last week's episode. We talked about it over there, but today we've got to review 4 more sides: CSK, Gujarat, Lucknow, and Punjab. Nick, shall we start off with CSK? Last week, with the way we did it is you gave me what you thought your 11 would be, and then we kind of talked through that. Do you have your 11, what you suspect the 11 might be for Chennai Super Kings?
Yeah, I've got my 11s, man. And for CSK, I am going Ruturaj and Ravindra at the top, a middle order of Rahul Tripathi, Shivam Dubey, Sam Curran, Deepak Huda, Benjamin Button, Mahendra Singh Dhoni at 7, and then the bowlers, Jadeja, Ashwin, Noor, Patirana, with Khalil Ahmed as their 12th. I reckon it's a pretty good team.
Do you think there is enough there? I mean, the bowling's pretty good, isn't it?
The bowling's good, and they've got good bench strength. So they've got Jamie Overton, Nathan Ellis on the bench in terms of domestic bowlers. They got guys like Mukesh Chowdhury, Kamlesh Nagargoti, Shreyas Gopal. So they've got some decent names. I think their strength is at the top. Ruturaj has had 2 really good seasons over the past 2 years. Both of them, he scored at least 580 runs and struck at least 140. I think you pair him with Ravindra, who I think could be one of the overseas breakout stars of this season. He's just so talented, comes into it off the back of a great Champions Trophy, is really explosive, so probably pairs with Ruturaj well. If he doesn't go that well, you could bring in Conway, who's got amazing IPL stats. I mean, he averages 48, I think, in the IPL. You could possibly get both of those guys in if you drop a Patirana, Curran, or a Noor. I hope that they don't drop Patirana and that he has a really good year like he did last year, not the kind of form we saw from him in the SA20. And then, I mean, I kind of like the way their bowling attack is put together if Patirana fires, because, Jadeja and Ashwin are going to keep things really tight. Noor is still improving and should be a wicket taker. And then Patirana is that X-factor guy who can take a lot of wickets, bowl at the back end. Khalil Ahmed had 17 wickets last year as well. So they've got stuff. I'm just not sure whether they've got enough stuff. I think the batting might be a little light on star power. If you think Tripathi, Curran, and Huda kind of above average batters in the IPL, Kandoni, who's almost 44 keep on coming in the 19th over and scoring like 12 off 6. There seems to be a lot of pressure for me in terms of batting on the opening pair and Shivam Dubé. But, they've got loads of all-rounders, so they've got flexibility. I quite like them while being slightly lukewarm, but then they've got that Chennai thing, right? Where they're always, it's the old cliche, always 10, 15% better than you think they're going to be. The Chepwalk advantage, which they always make the most of. They're well coached by Stephen Fleming. So we'll see. Certainly wouldn't be surprised if they're there or thereabouts at the end of the season.
Yeah, I kind of feel like this feels like they're slightly stronger than last season, right? Even though they've got, it feels like also magically they've managed to kind of keep the same cool.
Yeah, I think so. I think the Sam Curran acquisition at the price they got him was pretty decent. I think Noor adds another string to their bow. Ravindra started really well last year, but then tailed off. I think he's going to be better this year. If they get the kind of Pathirana that they got for when he was available last year for a full season, I think they could be really good.
Yeah, I think a lot of how far they go depends on how good he comes through in the middle and end of the tournament.
Yeah, if he's taking wickets at the strike rate that he did last year and going at the sort of economy he was, then it's a huge, huge boost for them. If he doesn't do that, then it slightly changes things, right? Maybe they bring in Nathan Ellis, who keeps things tight, but isn't the kind of wicket-taking threat Pathirana is. I'm interested to watch this team. Nice to see Ravi Ashwin back in Chennai as well.
Yeah, of course. We need to talk about MS Dhoni though, right? Because I said it's like WrestleMania season for cricket. MS Dhoni, if the IPL is cricket's WrestleMania, then MS Dhoni is cricket's Undertaker, right? Because you just don't hear from him for the whole year, and then suddenly it's IPL time, and then he arrives to kind of defend the streak, right? And at pushing on 44, it's some effort to kind of play 20 over games to wicket keep for 20 overs in the heat of South India, right?
Yeah, man, it's incredible. I love seeing him every time March rolls around. Like, where's he been for the past year? What's he been up to? And it seemed like a couple of seasons ago there was this narrative that he was a bit shot, and then last year he came back and did really well whenever he was called upon. I love that he sort of sometimes bats 7 or 8, but he's still such an influence. Chennai absolutely loves him, and yeah, I can't wait to see him back on the field.
Should we move on to the Titans? Who is going to be in Shubman's 11?
So I'm pretty sure we'll see Shubman and Butler opening the batting together. Really strong pair. Sai Sudarshan at 3. I think they'll go Glenn Phillips or Shafane Rutherford at 4, Shahrukh Khan at 5, Rahul Tewatia at 6, Washington Sundar or Nishant Sindhu, young guy who I'm really excited about, 7. And then the bowlers, Rashid Khan, Kagiso Rabada, Mohammad Siraj, Prasidh Krishna. And then they've got good options in terms of a 12. They could go with someone like Sai Kishore. They could go Ishant Sharma, could go Kumar Kashagra, could go Anuj Rawat or Urvil Patel. They got loads and loads of options.
It feels to me quite a well-balanced squad, but do they have enough to go all the way, Nick?
I really like it, man. I think they're in my top 4. They've got an elite top 3 with Sai Sudarshan's only 23. Last year he got over 500 runs, striking at 140. I imagine he's a player who continues his upward curve. We know what Butler and Gill can offer, and then they've got explosiveness in I think Phillips will probably start ahead of Rutherford, but I really like both those guys. I think Phillips could be another guy who's due for a breakout season. Shahrukh Khan absolutely smashes it. Tewatia, will do crazy things every once in a while. And then you look at the bowlers. I mean, you've got Rashid Khan's a banker. Rabada, you'd think, will take wickets, as will Siraj, although those guys can be expensive. Prasidh Krishna has had injury problems, but he looked good bowling in Australia in that last test. If he can stay fit, Yeah, I think I really like it, and they're it's a rounded bowling attack, and they've got really good domestic depth. Nishant Sindhu is a guy who I want to touch upon because he's really exciting young guy. And he's only 20, but I think he could be sort of the next Jadeja. He just hit 100 in the SMAT, and he bowls left arm spin. He's got a career T20 economy of under 7, so he's someone to keep an eye on. Kumar Kushagra's got a lot of hype. Urvil Patel, someone who's struck 170 in T20s across the course of his career. So whereas the other teams, I felt some of their backup players, you don't know what they're going to do. Here, I think they've got guys who could slot in and do really well.
You think top 4? I want to talk about Sai Sudarshan a little bit, because he was he had kind of had a bit of a breakout last season. But is he striking quick enough for you? Because I know I've heard some other cricket content creators, I won't name them, but maybe they live in South London and maybe they're Australian, who aren't as high on the Sai Sudarshan train as I think maybe they should be.
I think that some people feel that Gill, Buttler and Sudarshan as a top 3 isn't particularly explosive. I guess if you compare it to Head, Abhishek, Ishan Kishan, I can see that argument. But then I think they've balanced it well with the guys who come after, as I said, Phillips, Shahrukh, Tewatia. No, those aren't guys who you're hoping to play like substantial innings. You want those guys coming in the last 6-7 overs and going berserk, right? I think if you look at what Sudarshan's done across the course of 3 IPLs, his strike rate over the last 2 years has been 140, and he's gone up and up in terms of run scoring. I'm sure that he's trying to add an extra gear to his game, and he'll have a bit more license with Buttler and Gill looking to bat long. For me, I'd be more worried about what kind of Josh Buttler they get, because he has not been in great form. I think that's a bigger concern. I think maybe the other concern is that there's you describe maybe their bowling attack as quite high variance. If you look at Krishna's injury problems, Siraj's inconsistency, Rabada can be a bit expensive in T20s, and Rashid is maybe not quite as daunting as he was sort of 3 or 4 years ago. So that would be my bigger worry.
Should we move on to LSG?
Yeah, let's talk LSG.
Giants. With a new captain in Rishabh Pant. What's your 11, Nick?
My 11 is, I think Pant's going to open the batting because they've got a shortage of openers. I think he'll be paired with either Matt Bretsky or Mitchell Marsh. They'll have Pooran at 3, Markram at 4, Miller at 5, Badoni at 6, Abdul Samad at 7, and then the bowlers, Avesh, Moshin Khan, Bishnoi, and I think for the start of the year, probably Prince Yadav, because Mayank Yadav's going to be injured. Prince Yadav, amazing name. With a 12th of someone like Shabaz Ahmed or maybe Akash Singh.
Sorry, I've just got a comment coming in. I'll get to that in a minute. So where do you rate this side then? Because I've been really impressed with this organisation the last couple of seasons since they came into the tournament. But I feel this might potentially end up being their most lightweight side. But I will caveat that with I feel like Lucknow is a place which always brings through a couple of younger players. We've had Badoni's come kind of made his name there a little bit, and a few others over the years. Am I missing something in this, Nick?
No, I agree with you, man. I was looking through this team, and I think it looks like a side that has overspent on one player and is really light. As a result, I mean, if you look at that bowling attack, right, especially with Mayank out, who is the X factor player, I mean, you've got Moshin Khan, who's gone over 10s the past 2 seasons. Avesh is a wicket taker, but he can be expensive. Bishnoi, is he as good as the top spinners in the league? He could have a breakout year. He's still young. But, I mean, then you look at their overseas players, right? Pooran is obviously great, but you've got Mitchell Marsh, who averages 19, striking at 127 in the IPL. Markram has only struck 130 plus in 1 IPL season. His career strike rate in the IPL is 129. yeah, it's just like I'm not sure who's their fifth bowler. Prince Yadav, people say that he's quick, but he's unheard of. He could be the Mayank Yadav of this year. They don't have much overseas backup. I think their backup bench players will be Britsky and Shamar Joseph. I think this team looks light. But then again, a side that's got Pant, Puran, and Miller in the top 5, you can't rule it out, right? That's the beauty of the IPL. But on paper, I reckon this looks the weakest team of the lot.
Ruben, we'll come to you in a minute. Let's go into the Punjab Kings because they've kind of, if you're going to be honest, they're a bit the kind of comedy of the IPL the last few years. Shreyas Iyer is captain. What's your 11, Nick?
Yeah, people call them the Kings of Comedy, but I think they've got it really right this year. So I reckon they go Prabh Simran and Inglis opening, middle order of Iyer, Maxwell, one of Stoinis or Omazai, Shashank Singh at 6, Suryansh Shedge at 7, who's someone who I want to talk about. I'm really excited about him. And then Marco Jansen, Harpreet Brar, Arshdeep Singh, and Yuzvendra Chahal. In terms of a 12th man, they could go with Nehal Wadera or Priyansh Iyer, both left-handers, who Iyer's had a really good smat for Delhi, whereas Wadera's proven IPL player for Mumbai. And then if you want more bowling, they've got that too. They got backup bowlers like Kuldeep Sen, Yash Thakur, Vijay Kumar Vaishak. So, yeah, I'm loving this team.
Did you say you had Maxwell in your 11?
Yeah, got Maxwell in my 11.
Maxwell in the 11. I'm trying to look through about other players that might. It does feel quite well balanced, doesn't it? I hadn't realised Stoinis was 35.
He's old. But I think that Azmatullah might get in ahead of him because he had a great Champions Trophy. I mean, they've got players in form, right? Inglis is having a bit of a breakout moment. Shreyas had a really good Champions Trophy. Jansen was the best bowler at the SA20. Like, Chahal's always going to be one of the best spinners in the league. Arshdeep is probably the second best Indian seamer. He's had a really good year. Hasn't maybe had the IPL season, a really outstanding IPL season yet, but I think that could come this year. He's a genuine 2-2 bowler. He'll bowl at the power play and at the death. And I think if you look at the way that bowling attack is balanced, you've got wicket takers in Jansen, Arshdeep, and Chahal, balanced with like the left arm spin of Harpreet Brar, which is usually pretty stingy. He tends to go under 8s. But yeah, man, Suryansh Shedge is the guy who I'm picking to be the
go tell us a bit about him.
He's who I'm picking to be the breakout star of the IPL. So during the SMAT, he hit 13 sixes in 52 balls that he faced, which is just totally unprecedented, right? He's a seam bowling all-rounder. He bowls heat. He was batting 6 or 7 for Mumbai during the SMAT, and he came in and hit a number of knocks that were, like 30-odd not out in 12, 15 balls as they marched to the trophy. So I'm really, really excited about him. I think if you look at the backup overseas players, they'll have like one of Omazai or Stoinis. They'll have Lockie Ferguson, Aaron Hardy. And in terms of domestic bench strength, they've got guys like Pravin Dubey, the pace bowlers who I touched on before. They've got Sarfraz's little brother, Mushir, who could be excited. I mean, the only weakness I could pick out is that this team's really right-handed. The only left-hander they'll have in their top order is those guys who I picked as the 12th, either Priyansh Iyer, who bats at the top, or Wadera, who's more of a finisher. But yeah, I'm really, really excited about this team. They've got a lot of guys who slam it about. Looking forward to it.
So the Kings of Comedy could well become the Kings of the IPL. It's all to play for, right? And the big bag will be here every step of the way. I say that once a week at least. We've had this comment in from Ruben Loganathan, who said, I think it's a player's right to decide whether they want to play or not in the IPL, as they have to take care of their physical and mental health too, so they can perform better in the future. I think we both agree with that. We just think the decision not to play it is the wrong one. And actually, you'd be better off saying, I'm going to take a break out of the England are playing loads and loads of white ball tournament, white ball series all over the world at the moment. You're better off taking a break from one of those, I'd say, than not going to the IPL. Is kind of what my take on it was.
And I agree with Ruben, but I think that the time to decide that you're not going to play is when you declare for the draft, right? Players know their schedules. They've got teams around them. They can map out what cricket they're going to have to play. And I think that, that's when you have to make the decision, not 2 weeks before the tournament starts.
They might say that they couldn't have predicted that the Champions Trophy would have gone so bad for England and that Harry Brook would have needed to step up and be captain. That's what they might say. I mean, some people might have looked at England's form going into the Champions Trophy and said it's not going to go well for them here, which you could have probably spotted during the time of the draft. When was the draft? November?
Yeah, just before Christmas, I think.
Yeah. So, yeah. There we go. Nick, should we wrap that up? We'll be back next week. Thank you for watching. Hit the subscribe button. Leave us your comments. Even when we're not live, we do still come back and look at them because we're vain like that. We'll be back next week with your IPL, PSL, WPL final. Anything that happens in the 100, we'll talk about that as well. We will see you later. Bye.
Bye.